Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
It's 5 p.m. across India. I am Dhanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from London is my colleague, Julia Chapman. Good to have you with us, Julia.
Good afternoon, Tanvi. It's 11:30 a.m. here in the UK and 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, efforts ramp up to get aid into Gaza and anti-Israeli protests break out in Russia. But first, the headlines.
Israeli military says its forces in Gaza gradually moving ahead with plan as war on Hamas militants deepens. US President Joe Biden urges Premier Netanyahu to protect civilians and increase humanitarian aid. UN Security Council to hold an emergency meeting at the UAE's request to discuss the situation in Gaza. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu accuses the West of seeking to expand the Ukraine war to Asia-Pacific. Adds Russia ready for talks on post-conflict settlement of the Ukraine crisis. And Indian Foreign Minister meets families of Indians on death row in Qatar, promises to secure their release. Heavy clashes continue as Israeli tanks have reached the outskirts of Gaza City. Israel's military forces said that they are gradually moving ahead with the plan in Gaza. The death toll in Gaza has crossed over 8,300, a large part of them being children. 40 trucks carrying humanitarian relief crossed into the Gaza Strip on Sunday. Palestinian Red Crescent Society received the supplies, including food and medical necessities. A total of 118 trucks with aid have entered the Gaza Strip as of Sunday. The Israeli side has still not provided any supply of fuel, which is hampering the functioning of generator-powered hospitals.
We are progressing gradually according to our operational plans. The offensive activity will continue and intensify according to the phases of the war and its goals. Children, women and the elderly, Israelis and other nationalities are being held by a murderous organization that committed a war crime, committed a crime against humanity of unimaginable proportions.
Now, as the Israel's army moves into the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah have started firing rockets and fire into the Israeli territory, leading a big threat to the Israelis. Clashes at Israel-Lebanon border raise fears of a wider war in the region. DD India's Amritpal Singh reports from Shlomo in Israel.
The army enters the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah has started firing rockets and missiles into the Israeli territory. They have threatened the Israelis that if they do a ground assault inside the Gaza Strip, they will open a full-fledged war front. I'm right now standing at a place called Shlomo. You can see the smoke in the air. Constantly, rockets are being fired by the Hezbollah into Israeli territory, and Israel is responding back by firing back. Those mountains, that wall that you see is actually Lebanon. I'm standing at a place called Shalomi, which is right on the Israel-Lebanon border. It is the last village or kibbutz on the Israeli side, and on the other side, what you see is Shalomi, and you can hear rockets being fired, missiles being fired, and RT guns being fired in response by the Israeli military. This area has been declared a militarized zone. People have been evacuated completely. It has become, cities and villages along the border have become a ghost border. Now the real threat remains that if Hezbollah opens a full front, Israel will have to fight the war on two fronts, one on the south with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and one here in the north with Hezbollah. So the situation here is deteriorating by the minute as the Israeli army decide. You can hear these, rocket fire behind me. That smoke that you see up there is the Hezbollah hitting territories inside Israel, and Israel responding back with its trying to neutralize their rockets and also hitting bases inside Lebanon of Hezbollah. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, had warned Hezbollah that if they jump into this war, he will finish them off as he's vowed to do with the Hamas. But that is easier said than done, because Hezbollah has the backing of Iran. Now, the real threat at this moment is the regional spillover. Will the war escalate? And this is what all countries have the apprehensions, and therefore you see heightened diplomacy happening in New York and elsewhere, Western leaders calling on Benjamin Netanyahu to ask him to take steps which prevents the war from escalating. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amritpal Singh at Shalomi on the Israel-Lebanon border for DD India.
And Amritpal Singh joins us live from Jerusalem. Amritpal, as Israeli tanks reach the outskirts of Gaza City, how many civilians still remain in Gaza, and how safe are they?
How many civilians remain in Gaza? 2.4 million people live in Gaza, the whole Gaza Strip, which is a very narrow strip, 41 kilometers long, at places just about 5 kilometers wide, at some other places 12 kilometers wide, just about 350 square kilometers, the size of, say, Greater Noida. That's what Gaza is for you. The Gaza city is the capital city of the Gaza Strip, which is in northern Gaza. We understand the population there is close to about 9 lakhs. 6 lakhs have moved out. 3 lakhs stay there. They haven't been able to move out. Many of them are, not in a position to move out, etc. Could be the Israelis say they are being held captive by the Hamas to use as human shields, etc. The true, in war, the first casualty is truth. Information warfare, as you know, is an integral part of military warfare. So, what both sides tell you, you have to take it with a pinch of salt and try and analyze. But the UN does say that 6 lakh people have moved to southern Gaza. So that's as you rightly say, tanks have reached the outskirts of the Gaza city. The military would want to go in, the ground forces would want to now go in for close combat. Aerial bombing is going on. They are being backed by UAVs and drones. The Navy of the Israeli Navy has sealed the coastline of the Gaza Strip in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. They are not directly taking part, Tanvi, in the operations, but they have positioned themselves there for two reasons. One, towards the end phases of the war, the Hamas does not run away by sea because they want to kill them. And secondly, the arms and ammunition do not come into Gaza via the sea route, because through the land route at Rafah crossing, which is the crossing between Gaza and Egypt, they are monitoring everything that goes inside. And that's why the sort of delays that you see. One bad news is that a woman, Israeli German woman, body, skull bones have been found. She was abducted by the Hamas. Her family has been informed. This is the latest development. This is what the IDF told us a few minutes back. Also, the good news is that yesterday, 33 trucks of aid went inside. If you remember, 20 is the agreed number, but for the past few days, that number was not going in because, because of very close scrutiny and monitoring by the Israelis, and the required amount could not go in after the American president spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu, and the UN chief made a desperate appeal saying that, please loosen monitoring. So they seem to have relaxed a bit, and 33 trucks went in on Sunday. The small glimmer of hope is in the only glimmer, which is a very small one here in the war as it intensifies and will intensify in the days to come, is that despite the military campaign, trucks carrying relief material, even in small numbers, are going in. Tanvi?
Okay, we leave it here. Thank you very much. Amritpal Singh joining us live from Jerusalem. British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has said that his country was working on a humanitarian pause to get aid to the people of Gaza. My colleague Julia Chapman is in London. She gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Julia, who else is Britain considering talking to on this?
Britain is in talks with Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Israel to find a path towards a humanitarian pause in Gaza in an effort to get much-needed aid to the people in the conflict-torn enclave. The UK Prime Minister and the country's Home Secretary are holding an emergency meeting with security officials to discuss the threat of domestic terrorism. With the war between Hamas and Israel, there are fears the risk of a terror attack within Britain has increased. Stuart Smith reports from London.
The threat level for England is substantial, meaning an attack is likely. The threat level is reviewed by the UK's Domestic Security Service, MI5, which lowered the risk from severe to substantial in February, concluding the risk of an attack had reduced from highly likely to likely. MI5 says the greatest prevailing threat to the UK from international terrorism comes from Islamist extremists. A government minister refused on Monday to be drawn on whether the threat may return too severe in light of the situation in Gaza. In the UK, both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents have increased substantially since Hamas attacked Israel over 3 weeks ago, and several marches in support of Palestine as well as Israel have been held in London since. The UK government has supported Israel politically and defended its right to respond with force, while also calling for what it describes as a humanitarian pause to allow aid into Gaza as well as British nationals to flee. The UK's Foreign Secretary is in Dubai for talks on how to achieve that. There are reports that Hamas is forcing around 200 British nationals to stay in Gaza, and on Monday a UK government minister said if that's true, that is a form of hostage-taking, further justifying the UK's support for Israel and its right to defend itself. Stuart Smith in London, reporting for DD India.
In direct response to the emerging humanitarian situation in Gaza, the British Prime Minister announced more than doubling of our aid to the Palestinian people in Gaza. But at the moment, that aid is predominantly stuck in Egypt. We're working extensively with the Egyptians, with the Israelis and others to try and have a humanitarian pause, temporary pause, so that we can get that humanitarian aid to the people that need it.
Hundreds of anti-Israel protesters stormed the tarmac at an airport in Russia's southern region of Dagestan. Police officers arrested 60 people and more than 20 were injured during the incident in Makhachkala. The protests began after a flight landed from Tel Aviv. The Russian Aviation Authority has closed the airport to incoming and outgoing flights until security checks are completed. The head of the mostly Muslim region has visited the airport, calling the incident a gross violation of the law. DD India's Dasha Chernyshova sent us this report from Moscow.
Well, we have seen the flurry of condemnation and criticism from the Russian officials, all saying that that is absolutely unacceptable. They have been calling for restraint, for peace, and for the attempts to remain calm in this very difficult period of time. At the same time, some Russian authorities have been saying that that is an incident that has been perpetrated from outside, stressing that the coordination of that rally, of that riot, has been taking place in the Telegram channel, which is operated from Ukraine. So the Russian authorities have unanimously criticized the protesters, saying that this was amounting to the terrorism activities and this should not be repeated. We also understand that some Russian officials have been saying that it is absolutely detrimental at this very period of time when Russia is also holding on its so-called special military operation in Ukraine, and all of the efforts of those riders should have been not in that place and not at that time. At the same time, obviously, we have seen a lot of criticism from the Russian officials stressing that the authorities should not allow that to happen once again. Of course, there are many questions as to why that did happen, and the authorities are trying to stress that that is an isolated incident and that is not the malaise that is spreading around the Russian society, as for instance the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has been hinting. So the isolated incident is probably the right description of that incident, but at the same time the Russian authorities are saying that this should not be repeated, and again there is a trace of outside influence in what has happened.
The United Nations Security Council will hold an emergency meeting on Monday afternoon, New York time, to discuss the Israel-Palestinian conflict. It will be at the request of the United Arab Emirates. The UN Security Council has failed in its attempts to stop the war in Gaza, as its members were unable to approve either the United States resolution calling for humanitarian pauses or Russia's resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said that Russia is ready for talks on a post-conflict settlement for Ukraine. Speaking at the Beijing Defense Forum, Shoigu added that Russia is also ready for talks on further coexistence with the West. However, the Russian defense minister also said that the US and its Asia-Pacific allies are undermining stability in the region and accused the US of fueling geopolitical tensions.
Russia is open to discussing and resolving any security issues if this dialogue is honest, fair, and based on mutual respect of the contracting parties. However, without the West reconsidering its destructive line, which implies inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia, hardly any fruitful negotiations in this area are possible. However, should the necessary conditions be created, we remain ready for political discussions on realistic grounds, both on the post-conflict settlement of the Ukrainian crisis and on the parameters of further coexistence with the West as a whole.
The US and South Korea are holding large-scale joint drills involving stealth planes to boost their joint capabilities this week. It comes amid growing concerns about North Korean threats to stability in the region. DD India's Patrick Falk gives us the details.
Vigilant defense exercises will last until Friday, and they're described as mega drills involving 130 aircraft from both countries, including South Korean F-35A fighter jets, as well as American F-18 fighters that are normally based in Japan. And the drills are designed to enhance combined military capabilities and come amidst North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. They also come following a week of joint combat training between the US and South Korea at the Korea Combat Training Center in an area that appeared to simulate fighting in Pyongyang. And this involved high-tech weapon systems, including drones carrying weapons, as well as unmanned vehicles, and are part of efforts by both countries to modernize combat capabilities. It's also significant because it comes amid heightened tensions between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea.
That's it from me here in London. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Julia. Julia Chapman joining us all the way from London. You're watching DD India Global. Still to come on the show. The US military has started bulk buying Japanese seafood to counter China's ban. And our spotlight on the father of India's nuclear program, Dr. Homi Jahangir Bhabha.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met with the families of the 8 Indians detained in Qatar this morning. He wrote on social media platform X, stressed that government attaches the highest importance to the case and fully share the concerns and pain of the families concerned, underlined that the government will continue to make all efforts to secure their release, will coordinate closely with the families in that regard. Now, Indian Navy Chief Admiral R. Hari Kumar said that efforts are being made to get relief for these personnel.
Government to ensure that we take up through the legal course and find relief for our personnel.
Now, the 76th session of the WHO Regional Committee for Southeast Asia was held at New Delhi. The 75 years of WHO to protect, promote and support health and well-being globally and in Southeast Asia were discussed in this meet.
In India, we are following a holistic and inclusive approach. We are expanding health infrastructure, promoting traditional systems of medicines, and providing affordable healthcare to all. Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission and Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission, which have strengthened the digital health framework and physical infrastructure, and have catalyzed a revolutionary strengthening of the healthcare delivery in the nation.
30th October is the 114th birth anniversary of the father of India's nuclear program, Dr. Homi Jahangir Bhabha. Here's a look at his major contributions, achievements, and lesser-known facts about this renowned nuclear physicist.
Doubling of the world's population within the next 100 years, which is the least that we can expect. This would exhaust the known reserves of fossil fuels in under a century.
Homi Jahangir Bhabha, hailed as the pioneer of Indian nuclear advancements, possessed an indomitable spirit that propelled his meteoric rise to greatness. Born into a wealthy family of industrialists and businessmen in Mumbai, his destined path seemed predetermined. However, his restless soul yearned for the ethereal secrets of physics. In 1927, he embarked on a transformative journey to Cambridge University, a fateful decision that would set the stage for his monumental contributions. In a letter to his father in 1928, young Homi described his passion for physics.
I seriously say to you that business or a job as an engineer is not the thing for me. It is totally foreign to my nature and radically opposed to my temperament and opinions. Physics is my line. I know I shall do great things here, for each man can do best and excel in only that thing for which he is passionately fond, in which he believes, as I do, that he has the ability to do it, that he has in fact been born and destined to do it. Besides, India is not a land where science cannot be carried on.
Armed with a prestigious PhD in nuclear physics, Bhama returned to his motherland, India's sweet in promise. As the Inferno World War II raged on, Bhama embarked on the mission of enlightenment at the Indian Institute of Science. The seeds of change had been sown, leading to the inception of the legendary Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in 1945. He established the esteemed Bhama Atomic Research Center and orchestrated the groundbreaking UN Conference on Atomic Energy, leaving an indelible mark on global nuclear discourse. On a fateful day in 1966, Bhama's vibrant existence was abruptly extinguished. A tragic plane crash, mere moments before a rendezvous with destiny in Geneva, silenced the illustrious physicist, leaving behind an irreplaceable void. His legacy, however, burns brightly, forever etched in the annals of scientific achievement. Sujata Lochab for DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. For the first time, the United States has started purchasing Japanese seafood to supply to its military in the country. It is a response to China's ban on the products imposed after Japan released treated water from its Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea. U.S. State Senator Jeff Wilson has been acquitted by a Hong Kong court for illegally possessing a firearm. Wilson, who accidentally brought a pistol in his carry-on luggage during a vacation, claimed that the airport security failed to detect it. He will need to remain crime-free for the next 2 years. Serbian President Alexander Vučić met with French, Italian and German leaders in Brussels on the sidelines of the EU summit on Thursday. They discussed pathways for de-escalating tensions with Kosovo. Spanish police seized 720 kilos of cocaine hidden among scrap metal in a truck from Costa Rica in the southern Spanish city of Malaga. Total 8 people were arrested across the Andalusia region. Police officers dismantled the truck and found blue packs inside an aluminium sarcophagus after opening it with drills and tweezers. And ahead of the Indian festival of Diwali, the Festival of Lights, the Mayor of London organised an annual Diwali celebration at the Trafalgar Square. The free public event saw a large audience witnessing Indian traditional dances, music, activities and food from various parts of India that captured the festival spirit. So Diwali festivity is on in Trafalgar Square from London. So that's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. Catch us online at ddindia.co.in as well. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.